Hello and welcome to Lord of the Board. My name is Sam Smith, and today we are going to be doing an overview and strategy guide for the Blacksmith in Merchant's Cove. Now, I'm not going to be teaching you exactly how to play the Blacksmith, but I will give you a little bit of an overview of how the character works. You can actually find how to play guides elsewhere on the channel. This definitely is a little bit more of like getting an idea of how the character works and then also capitalize on that character's strengths. Follow the setup guide in the really handy manual here. And then essentially what you're going to be doing is you're going to be visiting all of these forges, loading them up with dice, and then you're going to be using the forge action in order to craft materials. You're either going to get the large goods out of the two furnaces on the left or the small goods on the two furnaces on the right. Now with the small furnaces, you're going to be aiming for lower numbers, and then with the large furnaces, you're going to be aiming for higher numbers, so combined between the coals and the dice that you load into the forge. In addition to that, you also have the smelting furnace, which is how you actually get more dice to add to your collection. All you have to do is go here, place one alloy dice, and then when you forge, you can activate the smelting furnace here in order to grab that dice that you placed back, as well as an additional dice, which will open up one of these sponsorship opportunities under there. And that really is essentially the character. You've also got your recruit a Townfolk space and your activate staff action space. And we'll go ahead and talk a little bit about the staff abilities. We've got the Billower, which allows you to basically adjust the coals up or down by 3 pips, and this can be distributed however you want. Then you've got the Metallurgist. This allows you to completely load the empty spaces in one furnace with your alloy dice from your supply. Then you've also got the Apprentice. This allows you to take the forge action in 2 furnaces. So this is basically just a limited forge action. And then you've got Security, which allows you to choose and discard 1 corruption card from your supply. But now that you have a little bit of an idea of how Olaf works, I'm just going to go into some strategies and tips for you to play your first game a little bit better. Now, with the Blacksmith, you are able to craft your goods extremely quickly. So one of the goals is to try and see exactly where the market's going to go. It is very likely that you are going to have to create goods before you really have enough information from the market, just due to the fact that you create them so well and you don't really want to waste actions. So one strategy and tip is to try and match the goods that you're making with the goods that another player is focusing on. That way, that other player is going to be trying to influence the market the same direction as you are, hopefully, and you can get a good sale with those ones that you just had to create by default. Now, my second tip would be to remember how to use those forges. When you're forging, you want to stock as many before you actually do the forge action. If you're only going to be creating 2 goods for 2 time, it's going to be a lot less efficient than if you've loaded up all of your furnaces and your smelting furnace and then use the forge action to get 4 goods and an alloy dice. That is going to be the main goal of what you will want to achieve with these forge actions. Also, another thing to note within this is that you can only craft 2 small goods and 2 large goods at a time. So in order to get 3 small goods, you will have to have forged twice. Keeping that in mind is very important, as well as in the early game, you will not be able to create 2 of the same color. You will have to get more alloy dice in order to create 2 items of the same color. So a huge priority in the beginning of the game as the Blacksmith is to just grab those alloy dice in order to have more to stock up your forge and in order to make really economic forge actions throughout the rest of your turns. Now, with the Blacksmith, it is extremely easy to avoid gathering corruption because you're always going to know when you get it, and you can always manipulate your dice enough to avoid grabbing so if you wish to. Now, with that in mind, one thing that I would say is that grabbing those Townsfolk cards for just the 1 time and 1 corruption card is actually pretty good because you're not going to be gaining a lot of corruption cards as this character. So grabbing those once in a while is a really good way to fit into your character's turn structure, seeing as you have so many 1-time spots already. You can get multiple actions, including recruiting a Townsfolk, and this can also be a really economic way to fill up those staff actions for a very low time cost. The staff actions for Olaf Thundercrack are actually really interesting because the very first game I played as this character, I never used them. I think I only got one and I barely activated it, and I still had a pretty decent game. So the cool thing about this character is that you can play this character pretty well without ever really using those staff actions. However, you are going to more consistently have a better game if you're filling up some of these staff actions in order to match up those sponsorship icons with the guild halls. So with that being said, there is an order that I like to get those staff actions. I would say that getting them in this order is the best way. First, you're going to want to get the Billower, then you're going to want to get the Apprentice, then the Metallurgist, and then the Security. As my last tip, I just wanted to give some basic ideas on what you can really do in your turns and what your goal is, and that is to fill in as much time as possible before it passes to another player's turn. How do you do this? It is extremely simple. This character makes it really easy because of those low time cost actions. When you're moving around the board using those low time cost actions, you're only moving your time tracker up one space. So when you're behind your opponents and there's a gap, you can get 3 actions in. You could use one time, and then a 2-time, or you could do one time if you want your turn to come even sooner. So the Blacksmith has so many different options. They could load 2 furnaces and then do a forge action. They could load 2 furnaces and an alloy dice, and then it will be their turn a little bit sooner because you only be one time above the last player. They have so many ways to manipulate that, and you want to always be looking for opportunities to get as much of those short, small time bursts in before passing to your next turn. That is how you can most efficiently play this character, and if you followed all the previous tips, you're definitely going to have a very powerful game as Olaf Thundercrack. As the last thing that I really wanted to just talk to you about is just a little bit of an overview of how I personally like to play this character. I call it the Black Market Blacksmith because this is one character that I actually fully support going for those black market sales. What do I mean by that, and why am I saying that? This character doesn't collect a lot of corruption, but corruption isn't necessarily bad, especially if you're making a good deal for it. And selling to the black market once each round, that's going to constitute in only 3 corruption cards. That on average will be a -9 points, but your gain could easily be about 34 points or so, and that's without discarding any of those corruption cards. Now, how am I factoring in this? The way that I like to do it is that since I don't always have control in the beginning of what colors I want, but I still want to economically fill my whole furnace, with those extras that I have, I will always try to sell to the black market each round in order to get some extra points. And if you make it your goal to sell to the black market 2 large goods every single round, in addition to trying to focus on getting some of the other colors, you will have an excellent game as the Blacksmith. I hope you enjoyed today's video, and I really hope that this helped you get a little bit of an idea of a more strategic way to play this character. Now, I will note that the Blacksmith is probably the easiest character in the game to play, and maybe these tips were a little bit straightforward for you, but if you did learn something new, or if you have a new idea on how to play this character, please comment down below. I'm really excited to cover the rest of these characters in this excellent game. So thank you so much for joining me in this guide for Olaf Thundercrack. That is it for the video. Let's go ahead and drop the beat.